One sec.
My name is Derek Osborne. Chair of the. I would like to start by proclaiming all the elected officials have holy office. Maybe elected official. Now I'm getting. Many. Side events are. As becoming increasingly challenging with and Daniel Sanchez for their assistance with the department. Yeah, do the stuff. They said the media were supporting us by online options. The topic of our program next month on June 14th at 7 p.m. Is still to be determined. We will announce the topic soon on our website and emails to people on our email list. The event will include our annual meeting of members at the beginning of the program, the electing officers, directors of the planning and we hope to keep the annual meeting short. Only so we okay, we're on studio online, but we still have to register. Registration is now open. Register. Remember. Yeah. How does it take the program? We have an annual meeting. The official notice of the annual meeting coming out soon by email to our members. The record date for the meeting is today, so not a better. Yeah.
This is right. She's
the election.
Could you come along and see if you can turn up the microphone?
Yeah, it doesn't even work.
So you hear
When I turn on the speaker all the way.
very proud.
Come down over here.
Together. They represent a significant expansion of the port. Finding other video.
These will compress people's voices.
Really
But
different.
everyone's
Previous.
okay. When you put it in the mind,
Same. I am setting up a work committee with.
it's filtering now.
Stalemate folks, but when it comes to this kind of organization, I think having it. Maybe we ought to make an objective. Cheap. Who knows what will in the future. Members should keep an eye out the information statement of this meeting in our email box that we hope to have another later this week, and that email will contain biographic information on these candidates as well as other business that will come to the meeting. Before getting to the meat of tonight's program, what I make nations by volunteering. We really need volunteers
Back, hold it down.
so we can continue to gather together and
No, no, you,
Wait, that's supposed to be
discuss
moving forward
important
right now.
issues. The volunteer talk to any of our volunteers here
don't
tonight
say
or visit our website.
stereo.
Form to volunteer,
Yeah.
get involved, tab on the website. Go to the volunteer Arlington website. We posted some activities for anybody who's interested in volunteering. We have actually 4 vacancies, volunteer vacancies posted there, but if you're interested in doing anything for the public, our first speaker tonight is Gretchen Reinemeyer, the elections or general registrar for Arlington County. Gretchen started working for Arlington Office of Elections as a seasonal employee in 2008. She became deputy registrar in 2012, and she was appointed registrar or director of the Office of Elections in 2019.
I think that's the noise is too far away that the computer is registering the background, so it's logging it out.
Election officials. Third international elections, the organization for security and cooperation in Europe. Gretchen is going to talk to us about the ranked choice voting ballot and procedures that will be used in the primary election in which candidates.
So much for inviting me tonight, those very kind words. So what I wanted to do today, rather than do a PowerPoint about ranked choice voting, was to actually take those in the room through a tabulation workshop that we've created to help everybody understand a little bit about what happens to your ballot after you rank your 3 candidates. So you should have received a ballot where you got to vote for your top 3 favorite ice creams. Hopefully everybody got one. If you did not, please raise your hand and my assistant Don will. So we got one in the front row that needs one and one over here. So what we're going to do before we start tabulating this election is we need to know how many votes we're going to have cast in this election. So I'm going to do a real quick count on for everybody who intends to participate in this exercise. If you don't want to vote, we don't make people vote here. But we hope everybody will choose to participate. So if you're going to vote in this election, please raise your hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 42. Don, can you get rid of ballots? Yeah, so what we got another one in the back. So I'm looking at around 45 votes. Will be a lot more accurate election night, don't worry. But so we have 45 votes that we're going to have cast in this election. And the reason that's important is because we'll have more on a say. Okay. The reason that's important is because we need to know how many votes a candidate needs to win to get in order to win this election. So this isn't like a traditional election that we have in Arlington where the candidates with the most votes wins. Candidates need to get 33% plus 1, and then we disregard the remaining fraction. So if we're looking at, I would say 50 votes this election. So what is a third of 50? Anybody can anyone do math very quick? Yeah, more let's go to the math. 18, 17 plus 1. Disregard the fraction. We don't care about anything that comes after the decimal. So 18. Okay. So we're looking at a threshold of 18 votes to win. That's what our number 1 race cream is going to need. So what I'm going to have you guys do now is you're going to go caucus for your favorite ice cream, your first choice ice cream, and we're going to put you in different corners of the room. So who voted vanilla as their first choice? Okay, I see Bill, your hand went up first. So anybody who voted vanilla as their first choice is going to go caucus with Bill. Who voted for pistachio as their first choice? Okay, we're going to pull some names from John. So anybody who But if pistachio is their first choice, it's gonna go caucus with John. Chocolate, where are my chocolate lovers? I'm gonna bring it over here just so we can keep you guys spread out. So anybody who voted chocolate as their first choice is gonna go there, cookies and cream. Okay, we're gonna come over here. And then Jerry, and Jerry ice cream lovers in the room, kids. You're gonna come over here. So at this point, I'm going to ask everybody to get up and go caucus with your first choice ice cream. So once again, we have cherry over here, cookies and cream over here, pistachio with front with eight, vanilla and chocolate. So is everybody with their first choice flavor? Okay, chocolate, how many votes do you have? 10, you're not at the threshold. Vanilla, how many votes do you have? 5, not at the cookies and cream. Wow, that's very hard. 7, pistachio, 9. So vanilla got the least number of votes this election. So I'm going to ask everybody who voted for vanilla to go to the next choice ice cream that you ranked. So once again, we have chocolate over here, cookies and cream over here, cherry over here, and pistachio over here. Once again, I'm gonna ask you guys to count on chocolate. How many votes? Chocolate picked up some votes. They're at 14. Cookies and cream. Did you pick up any vanillas? 13. 9, 8, 7. 7. So Cherry, I'm sorry, you are now the lowest vote getter. So I'm gonna ask everybody at Cherry to go to their next vote. If you voted for vanilla, you have to go to your third choice. Does that make sense? If vanilla's gone, and if vanilla's not getting any more votes in the election. And pistachio is 10. Okay, so pistachio, you are the lowest vote getter, which means you are now eliminated. But what has happened now? So we have 2 ice creams remaining, chocolate and cookies and cream. So since this election, we're choosing our top 2 favorite ice creams. Even though chocolate and cookies and cream haven't hit the threshold, so you're the last 2 flavors standing, so you're gonna be declared the winner. You guys have the broad support and the right path. Okay? So that is how ranked choice voting tabulation works. At this point, I'm going to ask everybody to return to their seats. Yeah. Okay, so I had a question. They wanted to know why chocolate won and cookies and cream didn't, and the reason was because we were electing 2 ice creams. So once we eliminated pistachio, we only had 2 ice creams left, chocolate and cookies and cream. So both chocolate and cookies and cream would be the winner. So with that, are there any quick questions? We don't have much time tonight, but are there any questions about tabulation and what? So the question here was chocolate was still one ahead of cookies and cream. Would would they win if we were only electing one ice cream? What we would have to have done is just redistribute pistachio, because maybe everybody at pistachio really liked cookies and cream. And at that point, cookies and cream would have pulled ahead of chocolate if we were only electing one ice cream. What if there was a tie? That's a good question. So does anybody know? The question was, what do we do if there's a tie at any point? So does anybody know what we do in Virginia elections when there's a tie? You try to determine by lines. So essentially, the electoral board would pause tabulation and draw the name out of the hat for which candidate gets to be eliminated and proceed. Yes, but I would say with, you know, at the number of ballots, we don't, like, elections don't end in ties too often, so. Yes, up here. Yes, the question was, what is the exact calculation for the threshold? So it is the number of ballots cast for the office, and you divide that by the number of candidates to be elected plus one. So in this case, we're electing 2 candidates, so you add 1 to that. So we're going to take the total votes cast, divide that by 3. You add 1 to that, and then you disregard any remaining decimal. And that is set. You disregard the decimal. So basically, you round down. Yeah, you do 15 divided by 3. Then you, yeah, and then you add 1, 17, and then you round up.
17.
Yeah.
So, Gretchen,
Yeah.
you have a special computer program to do this?
So the question is, do we have a special computer program to do this? Yes, there is a tabulation software that we can use to tabulate these rounds of voting after the election. Sorry? Yes, that is our intention.
Will it take longer?
So the question is, will it take longer? That's a really good question. So we will be able to release the first round results just like we would in any other election. Because margins might be close, that's really the case with any election where the margins are close. It might take some time for us to run the subsequent rounds of tabulation. And that's mainly because in Virginia, we have until Friday at noon to accept mail ballots that are postmarked by election day. We also have provisional ballots cast by anybody who registered to vote on election day or anything like that. So we're still actually tabulating ballots after the election. Normally, we can declare a winner election night, but anytime the margins are close, those ballots cast after the election do come into play. And so with this, with 6 candidates and 2 open seats, we're probably looking at tight margins. So we're looking at Friday night at the very earliest, Saturday, but up to 7 days after the election before we will know who won this election. Yes, Martin.
It's so close that somebody demanded a recount, some candidate.
Yeah, so what's Martin's question is, what if votes are so close that someone demands a recount? Well, that is allowed under Virginia code. So if the points are, if the votes are within a certain percentage of point, then a candidate can, our campaign can request a recount. And at that point, we would proceed. 1 or 2 vote, winning by 1 or 2 votes, yes, would be a win. But once again, in our room, we're only looking at 50 votes. In a real election, we'll be looking at several thousand votes. So the margins are, yeah, they aren't as close when you're in a larger election. So I did have one question from the audience that was given to me before the election, which has nothing, before the session, which has nothing to do with ranked choice voting. But the question was about curbside voting. So just as a reminder, we do offer curbside voting at every single polling location on election day. In addition to our 3 early voting sites, we have curbside voting at our location at courthouse, which is open right now from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then 2 weeks before the election, we'll be opening sites at Madison Community Center and Walter Reed Community Center. And both of those will allow for curbside voting as well. Okay. Yes. Yes. Yes, so our exercise unfortunately didn't go into surplus fraction, but what would happen is if, let's say chocolate over here, they ended up getting 20 votes, they now have a surplus of vote over in chocolate. So what we would do is everybody in chocolate would get redistributed to their next choice on their ballot, but instead of it being a whole point, a whole vote going to that, it's only a fraction of their second choice. And that fraction is determined by how much surplus did they get? So how much over to the threshold did they get? And there's a mathematical calculation to determine what that fraction of the vote, but every single vote from chocolate would have been redistributed to that second choice, but a fraction of that vote. And that's a little complicated to understand. We have a lot of resources on our website, and I will be here to explain that in a little bit more detail if needed. I will just surplus over the threshold. Yeah. Yes.
So we go these new machines, if someone by chance. Or someone, twice, right? You talk to hold the machine, it's up the ballot, or going to reject the ballot.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I do have some flyers that I will leave here that explain a little bit about how ballots are marked. So, Mr. Spain's question was, if somebody makes a mistake in marking their ballot, will the scanners reject it? And the answer to that is yes. The scanners are programmed to reject the ballot if they believe the voter made a mistake in marking their ballot, and it's not going to count as the voter would count. So at the bottom of our flyer, we have two examples. So if you rank more than one candidate in a single column in that first ranking, that's going to be considered an overvote. You can only rank one candidate in each column. And so at that point, the scanner would reject it. The other reason the scanner might reject a ballot is if the voter votes the same candidate in all three rankings. So what would happen is the scanner would count that first ranking for that candidate, but if that candidate were eliminated or won, when we went to look at that second ranking, it wouldn't count. We couldn't redistribute the ballot. So that ballot would just be inactive, basically an undervote. So it would no longer be included in any subsequent rounds of tabulation. So because we believe the ballot's not going to count the way the voter intended it to, we're trying to catch it and reject it. So the voter has the opportunity to spoil the ballot and mark it in a different way.
Okay, in the scenario you just mentioned, will the individual know that they made a mistake and the ballot come back physically?
Yes. Yeah, so the question was, will the voter know if they made a mistake? And yes, the scanner will spit your ballot back out. So we encourage all voters to, when you're at the scanner, you need to wait until the light turns green, and then you know it's accepted your ballot, because it could reject for any number of reasons. And once you're gone, if you're a world-class printer, then we aren't able to get you back, we get you to remark another ballot. So like I said, take your time, you can take as long as you need to mark your ballot. Yes, so the question was, if a voter only ranks one individual, would that ballot be valid? And the answer is yes, a voter can vote for up to 3 candidates. They can bring only 1 to 2 or 3 candidates is the voter's choice. So I see, yes.
And it's so you'll get a new chance to screw it up voting in person, but if you mail it in, you don't get it.
Yes, that's correct. So the question was, you get a second chance if you are voting in person, but if you're mailed your ballot, you don't get a second chance. And that is correct, because by the time we run ballots through the scanner or the mail, we don't know who that ballot belongs to anymore. So it would be kicked out, and 2 election officers would look at it to see if they could determine a voter's intent. So if we could understand what the voter was trying to do, then we could count it the way we thought they were trying to vote. So over here on my side.
Advantage to a candidate by only voting one time for that one candidate and none others. That one candidate.
So Martha's question is, can you give an advantage to a candidate if you only vote for that one candidate and you don't vote for any other candidates? No, that does not give that candidate an advantage, because that candidate is either going to win with your vote, and then your ballot wouldn't be included in any other rounds of tabulation. So it wouldn't go to vote, your vote wouldn't go to that second candidate, because we will be choosing 2 candidates. 2 candidates will be moving to the ballot in November. And if you only vote 1 and your first choice is eliminated, well, then your ballot doesn't get included in any other rounds of tabulation. Does that make sense? Okay, over here.
Maybe I have 2 parts. The first is, how many people in Arlington do you have on to something like this?
Okay, so that's good. So how many people in Arlington have gone through training like this? We have probably, we are starting to run people through this multiple times. But I would say we're probably at a couple hundred at this point. But what we do have on our website is we do actually have one of these facilitators toolkits that you can download. You can print it out and you can go run it with your neighbors. You can set up a table at a park and you can spend all day talking to voters about how ranked choice voting can be tabulated. So, yes.
So a different question, but related to the tabulation confusion.
Yeah.
So if you have picked three, and I did this and there was 20 ballots, right?
Yeah.
In your toolkit.
Yeah.
Vanilla was the top vote getter, I think with.
And sorry, I'm being told I'm at tonight. Okay, so this will be the last question. Yeah.
After everything was sorted out and Vanilla was the top vote getter, but didn't get over the threshold.
Yes.
And it went through tabulation, we realized that Vanilla was not looked at again. So your second choice was never in the mix, period. You voted to the top.
Yeah, so what she's talking about, that I am familiar with the scenario and I will speak to you after the session. It's too complicated to explain because they haven't done that workshop. So they don't have a frame preference to talk about vanilla and how it's.
So I guess the part of that is, are we disenfranchising voters? Forget the candidates, are only 6 of them. There's 230,000 people, not everybody.
Once again, let's talk after this. We can.
Well, I want the room to know.
Yeah.
Are we disenfranchising voters?
I don't think so. Yeah, because if we looked at the second choice on vanilla at that point, either all the second choice would have been eliminated or they would have already won. So once again, the second choice wouldn't have come into play at that point in the tabulation process. Once again, we talk about that in greater detail afterwards, because this is the scenario that most of the people in the room have not gone through that exercise. Okay, I have 10 servers, sorry.
Thank you. Prejudice that should be here afterwards and her calls is always very friendly, so people have questions, they can give a couple of lines and call them in contact with the office. I'm sure everything. I wanted to explain how you can submit a question to the candidates who are here tonight. You can submit a question for any one or more of the candidates to answer it at any time during the program using the Q&A box. If you're listening online, if you're here in this room, after the presentations are finished, we're going to be Jay, our moderator, who will introduce in a minute, although he doesn't need an introduction. We'll call on you, and he's going to alternate between online questions and in-person questions, and I'll be circular. We only have one microphone here, so I'm asking all the candidates, if they're elected to the county board, they will support better funding for the lower communities. I like our fun in this room. So, anyway, so that's a good segue to the my introduction. Jake Gazette, he probably doesn't need an introduction. He was elected to the Arlington County Board, and he served on the Arlington County Board for 20 years, from 1998 until 2017, including 5 terms as chairman of the county board. All 6 candidates for the county board in the Democratic Party are with us tonight. We'll let them introduce themselves during the course of their remarks. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to make opening remarks. In the order that we have determined by a drawing before during the we're waiting to start this program. So the candidates are sitting in the order. Susan is first and down the line. And then the closing remarks will be in the reverse order of the opening. After the 2 minutes of opening remarks, each candidate will have up to 1 minute to answer each question with a candidate or candidates getting the first opportunity to answer the question. If the question is directed to more than one candidate, Jay, who's a fair guy, has
discretion as moderator to decide what order. It's just too complicated.
Fairness for that. At the end of the question, about 8:05 p.m., each candidate will have 1 minute to make closing remarks in the reverse order of the opening remarks. With that, I'm going to ask Nate to take over as moderator.
Is this the only microphone?
Yes, you want to sit down?
I'm gonna just, okay. This is the only microphone, so and each candidate will have to use the microphone as far as I know, so I may wander around. You'll have to pass it, but I have to be fair in who I ask to take it, right? That kind of thing. I'm also gonna be a little rough on time because we don't have a lot of time and there's 6 of you. And first of all, thank you all for running for public service for office. Your timekeeper is right here. The 2-minute opening, you'll get a 30-second sign, and when he gets to the end, I may just cut you off. You can't keep talking, okay? And same for you guys when I call.
Ask a question. Ask a question. If you start talking and giving a thought, I'll cut you off too, because there's not a lot of time. You got to ask a question. So our first of the 2-minute speakers to introduce themselves, Susan Cunningham.
Great, so I am Susan Cunningham and delighted to be here with you this evening. I'm running for county board because I think we need more experience and common sense in that office. I am a 25-year resident of the county. I've got 2 kids in APS right now, 7th grade and 10th graders. And my training is as an engineer, so that means that I'm really a chief problem solver. And I've been privileged to have an opportunity to use that skill set here in our community as a volunteer, running the Dorothy Ham Middle School process, which Jay was still there and was, that one wasn't there. And more recently running AHC, our largest nonprofit affordable housing provider, but they had some challenging times and it's had some challenging times during COVID. So I'm known in the community as kind of a reasonable human, I guess is my new brand, that can bring us together and really break down a problem so that we can figure out how to build back a community that we're all proud of and delighted to be part of. So the issues that I am focused on are really threefold. One is bringing our young people back into the fold and reconnecting them to this community following some very bumpy years of COVID and mental health difficulties resulting from that, social media and a few national political issues as well. Secondly, really getting planning right and housing right for our whole community across life stages and incomes. And then thirdly, really exciting, just making basic government work. Make sure that when you call, someone answers. When you need something addressed, someone's there. So I'll stop there for now with lots of questions. Again, I'm Susan Cunningham. The website's susanforarlington.com. And I'd love to have your #1 or #2 vote in the election before June 20th, by June 20th.
Hola, buenas noches. My name is Jonathan Dromgoole. I'm a renter here in Arlington, a proud immigrant from Guadalajara, Mexico, and also a member of the LGBTQ community. I'm running to make the American dream an attainable reality for everybody here in the county. My family came to the United States in search of opportunities such as being able to buy a home, ensure that all of their kids had the best education possible, and starting a small business. Those are policies that I want to focus on here in the county. Making sure that we are expanding housing access and affordability, making sure that we are supporting our small businesses across the county that have proven to be the backbone of our economy. And also ensuring that we are looking at our infrastructure from a 21st century lens, making sure we're looking towards the future, green spaces, green communities here in the county. My professional background has led me to work for the Inter-American Development Bank, running a public consultation process across Latin America, so bringing diverse stakeholders together, much like members of the county board do, to look at issues and find clever solutions to these problems. From there, I went on to work now very closely with the Biden-Harris administration to ensure that our presidential appointees reflect the diversity of America. Again, bringing key stakeholders together, working with both sides of the aisle to make sure that we're moving forward in the benefit and the interest of the country. I have led the Democratic Latino Organization of Virginia, so a statewide Latino arm of our party, again, making sure that those communities have a voice. So I'm running for Arlington County Board to bring a diverse perspective and make sure that as we're moving forward with policies, we're able to ensure that everybody's included in that conversation. So I invite you to learn more at jonathandromgold.com and ask for you to rank me as your number 1 or number 2, or even number 3 choice in this year's election. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. My name's Tony Weaver, and I'm a local business editor here in the county. I'm local. I got my master's in business from UVA, and then went out to work in technology in Silicon Valley. I worked at tech companies, founded a tech startup, and after a successful exit, came back to the Northern Virginia area to help build and grow my family business in residential contracting. Been doing that for the last 10 years, upwards of 10 years, and it's been a fantastic ride. I've been very involved in the community. I serve on the board of this organization, the Committee of 100, served as the president of the Arlington Rotary Club, and I am currently on the Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission. My top issue, my number 1 issue, is addressing the commercial office vacancy rate. I think it's crucial to our community to maintain stable revenues, and anyone who takes on this job needs a short, medium, and long-term plan to address this problem. In the short term, I'd like to continue the work that the current board has done to amend the zoning ordinance to expand allowable uses for office space. In the medium term, I think we need to shift away from this prescriptive approach towards a more flexible nuisance abatement strategy that limits negative activity that impact the community, allow flexibility in the code to maximize the number of business activities available in office space. In the long term, I think we need to focus on working and incentivizing developers to convert the existing office space over to residential. This will help reduce the office vacancy rate as well as solve a portion of our housing problem. I've been talking about this issue for some time now, and I feel strongly that it is crucial that this problem be addressed in order to maintain the quality of life for residents here in Arlington. With that, I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
You guys are doing great time-wise. Good evening, everyone. My name is Julius D. Spain Sr. You can call me JD. I am a 14-year resident of Arlington County. I live in the Penrose community. I'm also a 26-year retired veteran of the United States Marine Corps, where I served in combat back in the day. I've also done some policy work for about 30 years in the Marine Corps, where I worked on a diplomatic assignment in Brussels, Belgium. I worked in the Pentagon for about 7 years. I worked on Capitol Hill in the United States Senate as a congressional fellow. I was also a Fed. And I'm a contractor working at Tyson's Corner. I'm a contractor, consultant in Tyson's Corner, doing some consultancy work at some 3-letter agencies and in the federal government. That being said, I'm a transformational leader. Many of you may know me from my time in the NAACP here in Arlington, where I took that organization from 175 people to well over 1,000. We stayed engaged in this community, we had partnerships. But right now, we need steadfast leadership. We need individuals that understand the many nuances associated with our county government, who has the relationships on the north side, south side, east side, and the central Arlington, and who is results oriented. We have so many people in this community that feel left behind. Mental health is my number 1 issue because it cross-sects every issue of what we're doing here in Arlington. The county needs to devote more programming here in our community, and I hope that we can help shape that. We're going to have 100 and some beds come online in a few months, in a few years. That's too late. Economic security, to what my friend talked about, corporate vacancy rate, we need to get back to the innovative economy. That was brought up a few years ago, back in 2014. I think we need to pivot. We have to think about our old traditional way of thinking and be innovative thinkers here in Arlington. And that's what I look to do when I'm on the board, is push our board, push our staff for excellence. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maureen Coffey. I'm so excited to be here with y'all tonight. I have 3 generations of my family within about 30 or 40 minutes of here. I've grown up in Northern Virginia my entire life and have chosen to make Arlington my home, moving here right after college, just like so many of us do. I can't imagine living anywhere else. At the same time, it's getting harder and harder to imagine how I stay here. When I say here, I don't necessarily even mean Arlington, but I mean the DC area in general. Increasingly, my peers are moving out and not out to Fairfax or Loudon, but out to Charlotte, North Carolina, Denver, Colorado, Cincinnati, Ohio. There is no way to make it work here for our generation right now. My number one priority is focusing on economic stability. How do we create pathways for young people, for people of all ages, no matter what phase of life you're in, to see the long term here in Arlington? My grandparents bought their home in Northern Virginia in the 60s, and they now pay more in property taxes than they paid for their mortgage. These are all pressures. These are all pressures we're all facing, and I think the primary thing that we need to do to address it is create a plan that gets us from point A to point B. We need a vision for what it is we want Arlington to look like and to be like. We need to know what that includes, and we need a pathway for how we're actually going to get there. I work in public policy. I'm a policy analyst at the Center for American Progress, a progressive think tank, working on child and family policy. I do this detail-oriented policy planning and implementation every single day when it comes to our social safety net and workforce development. That is what I want to bring to the county board, is not just a lived experience that looks very, very different than our current county board members facing as a renter, something that is very different today than it was many years ago, but also experience and expertise, being on the board of the Civic Federation and other organizations in Arlington as well. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, I am Natalie Roy, candidate for Arlington County Board. This watershed election is a vote on who has the best vision for Arlington. This election is about whether you want unplanned density for the sake of density throughout the county, or environmentally sound, transit-oriented development that meaningfully promotes affordability and diversity, which is what I support. Elections have consequences, and residents need to have their voices heard. Far from the isolated issues some claim it to be, Arlington's current upzoning everywhere approach is an essential issue in this campaign. It will affect our county's economy, our environment, infrastructure, transit, schools, and emergency response into the future. This is the reason I got out of my comfort zone and into this election. I have decades of experience as a community activist, an environmental advocate, as a PTA president, a high school coach, and as a small business owner. It's important to have someone on the county board who has experience in the trenches, knows the county well, and tells it like it is. What you see is what you get with me. I love Arlington. It is my home of 32 years. I have no political aspirations other than to serve on the county board to provide the unifying leadership and transparency that is critically needed at this point in time. Thank you very much, and I look forward to all your questions.
All right, thank you all very much. I'm going to ask the first question from the online questions, then the second I'll alternate between the online questions and you all here in the room. The first question, I'm going to build on the presentation we had earlier. A question came in about ranked choice voting. So in 1 minute, do you think, and it's probably better to ask this before the results, do you think ranked choice voting has had a positive effect on the primary? And if you were elected, would you encourage increased use of RCV and continuing it? And we're going to start now. I'm going to move this way and we'll go down the row again.
So I fundamentally agree that ranked choice voting has actually had a positive impact on the primary process and on the election. I think it gives us an opportunity to really dive deeper into the policy components, our backgrounds, what we're able to bring, and really have one-on-one conversations with all of you. At the same time, it allows for more diverse candidates to get into the field and not just rely on one type of candidate that we've had for a very long time, and it expands that. So I would love for us to see ranked choice voting implemented in other elections across the county, in other elections across Virginia, to really give you all as voters more opportunities to make sure that your vote is counted and that you have more opportunities to engage with candidates.
The quick answer is yes. I think it's been fantastic. One of the points that I think can't be overstated is how it shifts candidates away from attacking each other and kind of forces them to focus on the issues. And bottom line in Arlington, I think there's so many challenges that we're facing. Having everybody up here really kind of dead set, focusing on policy and issues, incredibly valuable. One thought I had generally about it, I think it might have been better to try it out when only one candidate, once he was up for election, just for simplicity's sake, when we talked to Gretchen, a couple hundred people have gone through the training, so, and we've got thousands and thousands of others who will be encountering it for the first time, so it'll be a bit of a challenge, but I recognize that it is important to move forward with this, and we don't always choose the occasion and circumstances that we gotta implement something, so fully in support.
Well, you know, the angle I'm going to come from is the civil rights, social justice angle, right? I believe in ranked choice voting, but I also believe that we need to educate and inform the citizenry. And I think Arlington, quite frankly, got a little started in like the fourth quarter. If we want, you know, high output, we got to do a lot of high input. And there's folks in, I will tell you, in Arlington, in certain parts of our community, who still today, as I knock on doors, don't know anything about ranked choice voting and how it operates. It's not your issue, Gretchen, right? But we as a county, right, did not effectively communicate this early on. And we did not put enough resources up front. $50,000 is not to educate an electorate of 160-some-thousand people. I would have done more. I think we're in the right direction.
I love ranked choice voting. I think it's excellent. It has led to such interesting conversations and forums, and I've had folks on the doors who have told me, oh, well, I know who I'm voting for, and it's given me the opportunity to say, well, do you know who you're ranking second? And it's an interesting conversation because it opens people up to possibilities. When I was the statewide Virginia Young Democrats president, we actually helped to support the bill that let this be possible in the first place. And when I decided to do this, I called Sally Hudson, the patron of the bill, so she could walk me through the math behind it. But it's been really great. I support it. I encourage it. I would love to expand it. I believe to do it in the general election, we will need another General Assembly bill. But I think that we're headed in the right direction, and I'm really excited about this. This has been a great experience to be in the first class here with ranked choice voting.
And I agree with everyone, what they've all just said. Ranked choice voting is the way to go. I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where we had it. It was a positive experience. I also think it definitely elevates the debate amongst the candidates. We don't talk about each other. We talk, I'm not just talking. We talk about issues. And I think that's one of the great things about ranked choice voting. I also think that it'll be great to expand it so that we're not just voting for, in this case, we're doing 3, but the entire, how many people are running, that's how much we should be ranking. And I think that would be a great way forward.
I don't belabor it. I think it's great as well, and I think the other piece that will make it even more powerful in the future is once we get to having a slightly larger board and or grouping, so that we're doing 4 and 3 at a time, where then all the voices can be heard.
Okay, who has a question in the audience?
I'm Joan McDermott. I would like to know what personal quality you have that would make you an especially effective county board member. Personal quality.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think my business background and experience definitely lends itself to leadership on the board. Currently, we don't have any small business owners on board. We've had business owners on the board in the past, and I think that it lends a different lens to your viewpoint in helping to solve very challenging, critical both policy and management problems. So, yes, to sum it up, I think my background as a small business owner would make me a very beneficial asset to our current board composition.
Thank you for the question, Joan. Empathy. I think in leadership, regardless of where you may be in government or in the corporate arena, leaders have to understand that, in this case, in the county board, the people you're listening to aren't just your best friends, right? And as you shape policy, you have to have an innate understanding of the human nature of it, but also you gotta realize that everyone did not come from the same place you may have come from. Leadership with empathy is key, it's fundamental to being a good leader. I learned that in the Marine Corps, I learned that in corporate America, because if you can't lead, people won't follow. And you gotta have an understanding, again, that everyone does not come from the same place you do. So when you shape policy, it needs to be inclusive, it needs to be equitable, it needs to be accessible, so we're looking out for people from our disabilities and groups. Everyone in the entire organization in the state of the county needs to be included.
This is tough. I am going to go with intellectual curiosity. I think that is super important in county board members, that we do not come in assuming we know all of the right answers. I think you need to know a lot, but you also need to know how to find out the answers. I'm a researcher by nature. I got involved in public policy because I believe it has the power to change the world, protect people, protect our most vulnerable. But when I go into my job every day, I don't sit down and start writing because I have all of the answers. I sit down, I read, I listen, I interview people, I do focus groups, I do surveys, I look for the answers that are out there. I bring that together, I synthesize, and then I figure out how to turn that into action. I think that is a quality that I bring to the county board that's really important, is the desire to let other people help guide the answer, not just have it myself.
One characteristic or one defining trait of mine is my energy. I have a lot of energy, I have a lot of commitment, I am very transparent, and I'm very action-oriented. And I think as a county board member, that is really important. It's not only being action-oriented, but it's also listening to folks, making sure that we are being responsive. And that's one of the main reasons I'm running, to bring more responsiveness to the board, more transparency, and new energy. And I think that would be a big asset on the county board, especially now.
I think for me, it would be a commitment to continuous learning. So I love to do after actions. I love to look at what the patterns are, look at how things turned out differently than we thought they would, and learn from that. And so that's kind of who I am.
I would say open-mindedness, just coming to every issue, obstacle with an innovative approach, and understanding that I will not have the answers for everything, but a willingness to go out, to reach out into community, bring those folks in, and make sure that we're listening to everybody's perspective as we're driving forward community-driven policies.
All right, the next question from online. It's about mental health. Please tell us one specific thing you would hope to do if you were in office to address the mental health needs of our community and or our youth.
Thank you for the question. Mental health is my signature issue. The first thing I want to do is get a handle on our 40-some plus vacancies within DHS. And I want to look at ways that we can perhaps bring in individuals, even those who perhaps may have disabilities themselves, because they're the largest unemployment group in America, that maybe fill some of those jobs if they're qualified. We are falling behind, we're failing our citizenry, and we're failing our youth. There needs to be cross-collaboration between county governance and school systems to get in front of this societal problem. You can't put a lot of, it's not all about money. It's the arts, it's transportation, it's housing, it's accessibility. All those things matter when we're talking about accessibility. So we're gonna fill those billets when I come in office. That's my #1 priority.
I think first and foremost, we need to do an audit and an inventory of what the services we have in Arlington are, both public and private. I myself have an anxiety disorder and I've suffered from depression in the past. I have good health insurance, I am employed, I am educated in English as my first first language, and finding a therapist or psychologist in Arlington is downright impossible, let alone one that accepts your insurance. I think that having a better inventory of what we have available is the place to start. As Judy said, we have huge vacancies in our public sector, but most people are not using public sector mental health services, they're using private sector. We need to know who is in the county, who is offering services, what services they're offering, and then we need to create a plan of how we fill those gaps and find the services that we need in Arlington or through telehealth or other options. And I know VHC is making a major investment in the years to come. I think that needs to all be part of the equation.
I have two things. First one is specific. The county board this year, the budget has $520,000 in the budget that they appropriated for mental health counselors in the schools. That's a great start. That's really, that's positive. I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see that become more robust. But I thought that was a good thing that the county's doing, and that we should be pushing that for more things like that. On the broader level, where looking out sort of long term, I agree we do need a long-term plan. We need something that says, here's what we have, here's where our needs are, and most importantly, here's how we're going to fund it. It is mental health. When I go door to door, when I went in the beginning, I didn't hear it as much, and as I went door to door in neighborhoods, it quickly became the number 2 or number 1 issue I was hearing at the doors. It was across the board. It wasn't just for students, it wasn't just for young adults, it was for seniors, it was for everybody. It was a very big issue. So I think that's one thing that we need to do is look on the big picture and look at how we're going to fund it.
So for me, I would go to the core. So we definitely have, folks have identified a few things, filling positions we already have and doing more direct services, but look back to the root cause as well. And we just had last week declared a national epidemic of loneliness and disconnection. And we're seeing that here in our community. We are seeing the way we talk to each other has changed, the way we are with each other has changed, even though Committee of 100 hasn't changed and is trying to keep us together. So I would really focus on bringing the community together. There's a project called Community Dinners that just has people come together and get to know each other and build conversation around topics. I think that's what our kids need, and honestly, I think it's what all of us need, is a little bit more time together to envision and build our community.
I think we need to take a good look at what we're demanding of a lot of our mental health resources, especially the ones in our schools. I've engaged, prior to the instance that happened at Wakefield High School, I was engaging with their counselor, who also happens to be the chair or the faculty point of contact for the LGBTQ club on campus. She also leads other after-school programs on top of being the school counselor. So we need to look at what we're demanding of them, making sure that they have the right resources, expanding on that staff, so they're able to do their job and do it well. So that comes a lot from making sure that we're providing the right budgets, that we're advocating for them. We also need to talk about this more openly. I come from a community where mental health, being Latino, mental health is not the first conversation we're going to have. I'm glad that we're now starting to have these conversations with new generations, but we need to be having it among our peers, among communities like this, to make sure that it's an open subject that we can discuss. That way it can be part of our everyday conversations as well.
I think that this is one problem where we absolutely do need to apply more resources. I think that we need to increase compensation for mental health professionals. We've got a lot of vacancies right now, and we're not going to fill them if we're not hiring competitively. So that is bottom line, something that we need to be doing. I think we also need to collaborate between DHS, Anita Friedman, and APS more. I think that is essential to solving this problem. Folks in our schools, our educators, they are just reeling from the results and aftermath of the pandemic right now. And we need to expand access to mental resources through schools. I'd also like to see more programs and activities for students between the hours of 2 and 8. Summer camp programs. Those types of programs can really help in terms of mental release and keep them out of trouble. So those are some thoughts and ideas on ways we can help deal with the mental health crisis.
I've spoken to 3 of the candidates earlier today about a pet peeve of mine, and that is the fact that when I make a phone call to a government, an Arlington government phone, the chances are better than even that I'm going to go to voicemail, and I am going to be told that someone will get back to me eventually, and half the time someone does, at their convenience, not mine. My question to the board candidates is, what will you do if elected to get the government employees who I pay for back to being transparent and responsive to my contact with them?
Once his phone call's answered. All right, Maury.
I know that this is a problem. This is not the first time I've heard this. This is not the first person I have heard this from. I think that we do need to make sure people are getting their phone calls answered, their emails answered, their responses. I know that there's a lot that we can do here. I know that in our earlier conversation, we brought up return to office, to be physically present. I'm weary of that, mostly because I know that of my generation, people will quit their jobs if you ask them to do that. And hiring is already really tough in the public sector, so we need to figure out what are the ways to hold people accountable for working and being available when they are at home. I think that's something that we're struggling with across sectors, public sector and private sector. I think that having a non-emergency phone line where if you have a question that is urgent but not 911 urgent for public employees, that you could have a direct number that they are going to find that answer for you, and just better customer service and customer relations, basically.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's a particular pet peeve of mine when I can't get a real person on the phone. I can't, sometimes I just don't know what to do. I keep calling until I get somebody. It is something that is a problem across the board in terms of, and especially now even more exacerbated with COVID and with remote work. I think a couple things. One thing I would really want to do is start putting in place more ombudsmen. People who actually, that's their role, to talk, to get back to people and to give them the answers that they need. That is one of the core things that county board should be doing, is making sure that we are responsive to constituents. And I also think along those lines, we should be going to where you are. We shouldn't have all our meetings at 2100, Clarendon Boulevard. The new county board should think about going to where people are. And I think those are a couple of things that I would do. I would also, in terms of getting people back to work, coming back, I think we should look at some really innovative, creative things, like with commercial space being empty, and looking to bring affordable childcare there. Anyway, that's. Thank you. I know.
So transparency is absolutely the core of a government that works. You have to have trust in government in order to have a functional government. And I do think we are in a little bit of a precarious place right now where we're not all trusting the intentions and the actions of our government. To move from there, the county board needs to manage the county manager and be very clear what the expectations are. There should be a clear, number of minutes or hours before a call is returned. There should be a tracking system that just says that call was placed. It may be more efficient, you may get better service to actually get a call back, but you should know clearly where you are in the queue and when you'll get a call back. That's just basic common sense.
So I'm supposed to be really good with technology, which means that if I have a question and go to our county board website or our county government website, that I should be able to find the answer. However, it's taken me an average of like 30 minutes to sometimes find these resources. So I really believe that we need to update our website, make it accessible to everybody across the community, making sure that folks like me who want to go online can find an answer quickly. That way, this is going to make it less burdensome for, if you can't find the answer, you want to make a phone call, there'll be less of us trying to reach out directly. But once I hit those 30, 45 minutes trying to find the answer to something, I made the call as well. No one picked up, and I had to wait back for an inconvenient time for me to get that response. But so first, we need to update our website, make sure that information is accessible and reliable. That way it makes it easier for everyone else who wants to get on the phone and make those calls to actually able to reach someone faster.
Yes, I mean, it's an incredibly frustrating experience to make 1,000 calls, get no response. And I think that there are a couple of ways that we can deal with this. First, I think to Jonathan's point, that in advance and kind of heading off the problem, making sure that information is accessible on the website. I think that's very important. I think that making sure that scheduling can be done in an automated way without engagement. I think that's also very important. Permitting, another thing that can a lot of times happen without a huge amount of engagement. Next, I think that we are dealing with a transitionary time, and bottom line, we change quite a bit in how we operate. Some people will likely have to come back to the office to handle certain core operations, but we need to navigate that in a positive way and strike a balance between certainly maintaining a certain amount of telework while making sure that some people are on staff and handle problems that can't necessarily be handled via telework. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. That was a really good question. And we need to know that we're in a digital innovation age. Something Susan mentioned, we have to have real-time data and be able to support the consumer when they contact the county, and be able to look at and see if this person spoke, had a conversation with. That type of data should be real time, right? We have George Mason University here investing millions of dollars in the digital innovation. And what we see in corporate America is there is no excuse that no one should be getting a call back. Arlington has to get there. So when I'm on the county board, I'm going to sit down with the deputy county manager for information and technology and find out what systems we're using, what we need to do to enhance that. Because there's no excuse that you should not be getting a return call. All right, sir? We'll make that happen.
All right, this next question, and I want to prove to you it's actually written here. Some of you know it's of interest to me too, but I didn't write the question. How specifically would you help Arlington meet its commitments to combating climate change?
I guess it's me. Well, reducing our contribution to climate change is one of my major priorities. And I think in terms of specifics, and I'll go right down the line. First, looking to convert our fleets as much as possible from gas to electric. Getting more chargers around the county, especially in multi-family buildings. Looking at, and there's a whole host of things. One is also looking at lot coverage and tree canopy ordinances. And I think for us, in the county, we've had a lot of issues with tree canopy loss, which is really a big environmental problem, especially like in my neighborhood. I think we've suffered the most tree canopy loss in the whole county in Lyon Park. One of the biggest losses. And I think that one of the things that we need to start doing is making sure that we have incentives and for the builders and for the homeowners for trees, for making sure they protect our trees. Here you go.
So there are a couple things, and for me, with an engineering and sustainability background, it's largely about the built environment. So I think back when Jay was on the board, we were very forward-leaning in our green building policies. Down along the pike, that we actually, when we did the form-based code, we didn't build that in. So I think there's some improvements on what we expect from developers to make sure that the buildings are net zero or extremely efficient. I also think that we can do a much, much better job of incenting reuse of buildings, both residential and commercial. That prevents the creation of greenhouse gases elsewhere or as things are transported to us. It also just makes sense. And then the final one is commissioning of buildings. So you can tune a building, and it's called commissioning at the beginning, but also every 5 or 10 years. And we need to be doing that with our schools and our public buildings and supporting residents in doing it for their own.
So as a county, we're very fortunate that we don't have any sort of major polluting industry here, which means that the majority of our greenhouse gas emissions actually come from vehicles and transportation. So I agree with a lot of what Natalie has mentioned. I want to pursue a faster way for us to electrify our bus fleet and make sure that that's accessible and potentially even free for everybody in the county. So we're incentivizing folks to actually using that. The other ones are electric vehicle chargers. Right now, they're predominantly found either in private parkings because of a building or residential space. Doesn't really make it accessible for folks across the county. Doesn't incentivize you to buy an electric vehicle. The few ones that are in public spaces are often behind very expensive paywalls. So we need to make sure that we're actually increasing our electric vehicle chargers all across the county and making it easy for folks to use it. That way we're incentivizing people to transition from a gas-powered car to an electric vehicle.
Yes, I think transit and buildings and electrification of fleet of vehicles within the county are all important ways to help move toward a sustainable Arlington. Shenzhen, China, converted 18,000 buses to electric in 2018, and we're still in pilot phases of converting our buses over to electric. I think that's something that we really need to hold county staff accountable for, really push to make sure that that transition happens at a much faster rate. I would also like to see an expansion of electric vehicle charging stations across the county. I'd like to see the EV charging co-op and the solar co-op expanded to target commercial clients such as homeowners associations and condos, provide better deals in the implementation and better knowledge and implementation of electric charging infrastructure to those types of clients.
Great question. I am a proud endorsee of my colleague to the left of the Sierra Club. And, you know, been a champion of environmental sustainability, environmental climate justice for many years. I agree with some of my colleagues here on the board as we talk about electrification of our buses and our fleet, more especially our school buses, right? We still have school buses out there running around on diesel. So I fully support the 2050 carbon neutrality goals. But yesterday I was at a meeting, I was speaking with our new climate policy officer, and I asked him a question about how are we tapping into our youth? And are our youth getting them involved in this new environmental movement? He doesn't have the answer yet. And that says a lot, right? It's not, we can't solve this on our own, but we're gonna have to actively engage the county and get into the curriculum within APS and start teaching our students about the dire effects of not doing anything. It's not about setting policy, but you're gonna need the champions for the next generation to see it through. Thank you.
I'm part of the most climate conscious generation that we've ever had. I'm also an endorsee of the Sierra Club. When I went to Oberlin College, I went in thinking I was going to be an environmental chemistry major. Organic chemistry had other ideas for me, and things could be very different now, but I really think it comes down to three major things: buildings, transit, and culture. Our buildings have to be more energy efficient. They have to use the most efficient, highest standards that we can get under Virginia law. Our transit is so important. 30% of our community energy plan predicted reductions in emissions comes from transportation. Vehicle miles traveled, even if we're electrifying, we don't control where our electricity comes from. That is not all clean energy right now. We need more people on the buses and on public transit to really reduce our emissions. That is the key thing, and that comes down to culture. It comes down to making sure that there is transit available for people to go from point A to point B when they want to go from there to from each place. And the time really threw me off there, I know.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Boy, you got your hand up fast. All right.
Good evening, all. I'm Frederick. Good to see everyone. Can you please give me a prescription for how we can turn back this high commercial vacancy rate? Now, please don't overuse the pandemic on that. But, I mean, this has been going on for years. I mean, when NAVC, NAVAIR left Crystal City, it took them a number of years to recover from that. So what prescription would you have for, you know, kind of moving that back to a nice, considerable level? Thank you.
What are some steps you would take?
to address that issue?
It's an incredibly important issue for our budget and has been, like you said, since before COVID. It has gotten worse during COVID, but it was on that same trajectory already. The way we use buildings for offices has been changing for decades, frankly. Leases are a little slow to turn over, right? So they tend to be 10-year leases. You don't see it right away. But when I was working for Gensler Architects, we could already see it happening. So it really requires a reimagining, and that requires thinking bigger than we have thought in recent years about that issue. It means declaring a national competition for how to do things differently. It means trying some things and seeing what we can get right. But it also means not relying on that budget freebie that we've had for many, many years. We've got to be able to figure out how to live with a little bit less of the office space, at least in the near term, and then think about how to reuse it for ways that save us dollars down the path.
So we define ways to attract innovative new companies that maybe we haven't even thought of, find approaches to the use of that space that are still forthcoming. Right now, there's already been expanded options to what we can use there, but the opportunity of pop-up spaces, experiential spaces, where folks can come in where it's a temporary lease for someone else to attract some business. I think either New York Times or the Washington Post recently put out a little video about how we can begin to convert some of those commercial buildings into residential. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there, something that we're really going to have to look into, but it's an option that we can also explore. At the same time, being innovative means looking at the buildings that are close to each other and saying, can we incentivize them? Can we provide something to make sure they all move into one building? And then we can look at truly having a fully empty building, and then what do we decide to do with that as a county? Or right now, having 20% of one building empty here, 20% of another building empty over there, isn't going to help us really be innovative and move forward to make up for the 22% vacancy rate and the loss in budget as well.
So a couple of approaches here. I think in the short and medium term, we need to dramatically expand the allowable uses for office space. I think we need to be throwing the kitchen sink at it, work with staff to make massively comprehensive lists. In the medium to long term, I think that we need to be focused on, one, recognizing that businesses operate different. They're going to be using space differently. Municipalities, localities across the nation are experiencing similar problems. We need to adjust how we use space in the county. And so that means working to convert much of this office space over to residential use. How can the county do that? One, I think we can work with our nonprofit developers, folks who we have a certain amount of leverage over to kind of push and spearhead this movement. If we get them making the transition, kind of demonstrating how it's done, we'll see for-profit developers moving in behind them. Once we've eliminated some of the regulatory ambiguity and risk from the equation. So that would be my two-part approach towards solving this problem.
That's a very good question that has been around for a number of years, even pre-Amazon. And something I mentioned about a month ago is that we need to look at, we used to talk about putting shots in arms. We need to put people in buildings. And how we do that in an innovative economy, and this was talked about back in 2014, right here in Arlington. Our recruiting and how we go out in national search, is something Susan talked about, has to be deliberate, has to be forceful. I want to see biotech, I want to see lab science in this corridor. But also on the backside of that, we're going to have workforce housing. It's going to have to be competitive wages. Old thinking, traditional methodology approaches and how we bring people here, it's not going to work because this is a national issue, okay? The way we work is different. So how do we do that? We got to go out and recruit. We got to go and incentivize. We got to bring new business to these buildings. I plan to do that.
Yeah, so I think 3 main points. It needs to be easier to do business in Arlington. We have not had an online permitting system up until this past year, and even now I'm hearing from business owners that it does not work very well. It requires immense follow-up, immense staff time, somehow more time than it was when we had paper permits. That doesn't encourage people to do business in Arlington. 2 is recruit and develop innovative businesses. I think things like indoor agriculture, which we have approved already, Area 2 farms in Shirlington, It takes up a lot of space, but it's a really, really good thing to have a local food source. And then other things, social services that we need in Arlington, things like childcare. If we have the space, we need to find ways to put that in the space that's available, because that also helps people to get back to work if you have access to childcare. And third, we need to address our regional competitiveness when it comes to how expensive it is to live and be in Arlington. Why are people supposed to choose us over our regional neighbors?
This is a problem that's not just for Arlington, it's nationwide. It's a growing problem here. It used to be 50-50 in terms of residential budget, you know, the residential revenue and the commercial piece of it, and now it's about 45 for residential and 55 for commercial. So we need to do something, we need to be creative, we need to be strategic, and some of the uses were mentioned, but we have a lot of potential for those commercial spaces. Recreational purposes, they're looking into, believe it or not, pickleball. We're looking at indoor farming, as was just mentioned. We can do schools. We can even look to actually potentially convert, obviously, for housing. For older buildings, that's possible. Newer buildings, 1960 and newer, it's more difficult. But we have a lot of potential, and I especially want to mention that there's civic associations and purposes that we could be using some of that space for, like the Black Heritage Museum that needs a permanent home. That would be a fabulous thing for the county to do, to give them a place, a permanent place, that would actually be good for the community and even potentially a great.
All right, so I was just gonna say, first of all, great job to all of you for staying on time. We are right on time to get your closing statements. 1 minute each. Sum it up. Why you? You're first.
And I'll do a minute. As I said in my opening statement, this is a watershed election. It is about who has the vision, the commitment, and the experience to go the extra mile and put in 120%. I am that candidate. I have the requisite experience, high creativity, strong leadership skills, and deep community roots to serve on the county board and put in the hard work to hit the ground running on day one. I have been consistent in my policies and fully transparent. I'm also committed to reinvigorating our public engagement process across the county. That's what you want in a county board member, someone who's frank and gives you the straight scoop. Many of Arlington's issues stem from it being a popular place to live. There are things we need to fix, and there's things we need to preserve. Arlington's best days are ahead. I would be honored for your number 1 or your number 2 vote. Thank you very much.
I've been thinking a lot over the course of this campaign, sitting between Natalie, who's been here for 32 years, and Susan at the end, who will tell you she's been here for 25 years, about how 32 years and 25 years ago, they were in my shoes. I increasingly think that 30 years from now, there's not going to be many people of my generation who can say that they are 30-year residents of Arlington, because we can't afford to stay here. I think that is the issue that it is incumbent upon us as a community to solve. How do we get where we need to be when it comes to all of our needs, when it comes to everyone in this community? We're all experiencing affordability issues, we're all experiencing struggles right now, but those struggles are impacting people differently. As a renter and as a young person, I'm going through something that you all probably 30 years ago could not have imagined. It's such a different world now. That's why it's important to have a voice like mine on the board. Someone who has that lived experience, has been going through this, and brings experience and expertise to get the policy done and get it right. Thank you very much.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, and to be an honor and pleasure to serve in your seat on the county board. I hold up my flyer because there's about 12 organizations that have endorsed me, to include former and current elected officials. You don't have to take my word for it. They've seen my work for over a decade here in Arlington. Whether it's workers and families, whether it's the realtors, whether it's the housing advocates, whether it's the environmentalists, gun safety, they trust me. I hope you would trust me, because at the end of the day, I'm a results-oriented leader. I don't have time for platitudes and failed promises and empty rhetoric. I get the job done. I may be forceful, but I'm also empathetic. But we're here, we have work to do in this community of 230-some thousand individuals. And so if we talk about Tiger Team and what's going on with our form of government, we need to look at that. And I want to do it. Thank you very much. I hope for your vote, number 1 or number 2 in this election. Let's go win this. Thank you.
Hey, Tony Weaver, if I'm elected, I will bring a business mindset to the county board, something that I think is much needed. My top priority is reducing the commercial office vacancy rate, stabilizing revenues, something I'll put front and center. I also feel strongly that we need to review our commitment to education, public schools. Folks come to Arlington because of our great schools, and our educators are really reeling from the aftermath of the pandemic. We need to double down on mental health for these folks, make sure that students have adequate access to programs, after-school programs, as well as summer programs. We'll also renew our commitment to environmental sustainability, help build out electric car charging infrastructure. Electric cars are coming. We need to be ready. We need to be prepared. We need to have a plan in place. We need to get this infrastructure built. My name is Tony Weaver. I got a strong plan for Arlington and the experience to make it happen, and I ask for your vote for county board. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for hosting this event. I believe you were all the first debate that got on our calendar, so I'm glad that we finally made it to this one. I'm running because I truly do believe in the opportunity that exists here within our 26 square miles. Opportunities to expand on housing while also increasing green space. Opportunities to promote and defend our small businesses. But I'm also running because representation matters. And nearly 1 in 5 Arlingtonians identify as Latino, yet there's no Latino on the county board. 2 in 5 Arlingtonians identify as millennials, yet with Katie Crystal stepping down, there will no longer be a millennial on the county board. And I think most shockingly, 3 out of every 5 Arlingtonians are renters, and yet there's no renter on the county board. So as we're making decisions about housing, small business, infrastructure, and sustainable transportation, we cannot pretend that we're making policies in the best interest of everybody in the county when all the voices are not represented on the county board. So once again, my name is Jonathan Bromwell. I'm asking for your number 1, number 2, number 3 vote in this election. You can start voting now, all the way up to June 20th. Thank you so much.
Great, and I'll close us out. I'm Susan Cunningham. I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight. I hope right after this you'll go vote for school board over at Campbell or get there to WNL on Saturday. Really quickly, main distinctions. I've been here a long time. I've had a very distinguished career in a lot of different industries, so I know how to get things done, and I know how to get things done for Arlington in a very transparent and inclusive and collaborative way. I'm an engineer, so I'm a problem solver, and I'm the only parent of school-age kids living through COVID. I think that matters for our community and for where we're going, and I'd be thrilled to represent you and your neighbors on the board. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, first, let me first thank the Committee of 100 for hosting this today, and then let me remind you how fortunate you all are, that we all are. You just listened to 6 qualified people running for the county board, so let's give them a good round of applause.
Thanks, Jay. Also, we were very lucky to have a very qualified moderator this evening. Before trying to, there we go. You have the screen, there we go. Ask you to stick around just for a few minutes as we wrap up. We want to remind you that our June 14th program, which is going to be online only on Zoom, on a topic that's yet to be finally determined, but the event will include our annual meeting and voting on the nominees for Committee of 100 officers and directors whose names were posted on the screen earlier in the program. We'll get out the official notice of the meeting and the information statement which will contain biographical information on the candidates. If you want to watch a recording of tonight's program, you can like our Facebook Live page and view it on Facebook Live. consider sharing the Facebook Live event with your friends if this forum is something you think they might be interested in. We're also going to record this and post it on our website, but that might take a few days. If you put it on Facebook Live, it should be